Awesome. So that's working now. Great. All right. So this webinar is basically both an introductory, but also a little bit advanced information for you guys. So you want to be a physician scientist. So here's what you should know. This is by the MSTP Ready Committee. So we did the icebreaker introductions. Afterwards, we'll have an overview of MD PhD program and study, and then we'll do a Q&A with the MD PhD student panel. So our MD PhD directors, we're planning on joining. However, right now they're deliberating on the next cohort of MD PhD students, and it's taken way longer than expected. So they will join us whenever they can. But yeah. So we went through this. This is me. This is Bianca. This is Cooper. And then this is Emma. Emma will join later. You guys can mute yourselves, everyone. And then, so who are you guys? So 130 individuals actually registered for this webinar. So out of you guys, 21 freshmen, 13 sophomores, 17 juniors, 22 seniors, 33 postbacks. This is important because knowing the level or where you guys are at helped us tailor the PowerPoint and also helped us answer the questions that you guys sent us. So we sent you guys the frequently asked questions sheet just to help you guys whenever you are confused or you need any help. You can look at that sheet, or we'll send you also this PowerPoint once this is done. So 70 of you guys say you're interested in MD PhD, 28 wants to do the MD route, 9 are unsure, 2 PhD, and we also have advisors who express interest. We have other individuals who also are trying to change careers. So a whole variety of individuals who are interested in this webinar. So first up, who are physician scientists? This is more for individuals who are just getting in and learning about MD PhD. What is MD PhD? So physician scientists, individuals who are physicians and investigators. So they spend most of the time doing research or applying research. Many also see patients. I would say many of the individuals who go to MD PhD route, as we'll highlight later, actually see patients. So most do research related to human disease, but there are also individuals who research related to like engineering, related to plant biology. So, but most do research related to human disease and understand the pathogenesis or mechanism of disease. So most work in academic medical centers or research institute or industry or government, such as the NIH. So MD PhDs are chimeras. So it's basically integration of both science, which is a PhD, and medicine. So we end up in the middle here, which is basically we become physicians who do science and who are trying to translate their science into improving human diseases or trying to understand how some things work in biology or system engineering or whatever else it may be. So who should do MD PhD training? This also applies for MD, but mostly for MD PhD training. People who are fascinated by biology and disease, have aptitude for science, are passionate to understand how things work. That's that PhD training. Enjoy helping people, which is both the MD and the PhD training, and are ready. This is key. Are ready to commit their 20s to combined training. And this is important because we'll tell you how long this program takes. So how is MD PhD typically done? So nationwide is hundreds of at least 100 MD PhD programs. And there's distinction. There's MSTP programs, there's also MD PhD program, which we'll go over later. The good thing about this is to promote physician training career paths. Most of these programs, they'll give you a stipend. So for example, for UT Southwestern, we are given a stipend, an annual stipend of $35,000, which amounts to basically $2,600 a month. And we don't pay for medical school. So you get tuition waivers. This is exciting because honestly, it's either your time or your money. And us, we chose basically our time. So curricula for this is basically mostly integrated. So for example, here, which I'll go over even more later, it's 2-4-2. And MD PhD training is a mix of this, and it's about 8 years. The average is 8.5 years. As I mentioned, it's either your time or your money. So programs for more interaction between like-minded individuals and trained students and faculty. Meaning basically you'll see individuals, for example, my PI is an MD PhD. She trained at WashU. So many of our PIs will be similar, or some of our PIs will be actually PhD individuals or MDs. So here's the breakdown, which I talked briefly about earlier. So the first 2 years, most of the programs follow this rule. The first 2 years are typically medical school training, mostly lecture based. So this is what's called pre-clerkship training. So, and it ends with step one. And you do basically lab rotations, trying to figure out what labs you're interested in. So no, you don't have to basically stick to the research that you've been doing before. Most people do because familiarity. So a lot of people try out different things because, hey, you never know what your interests are really. But most people do like 3 to 4 rotations. Some people do 2, and they know what they want to do. After that, then basically the 4 years of graduate school, which is like classes, lab rotations, and qualifying exam, which is basically when you go in and you're given a topic, and this depends on the school and depends on the program as well. So later is thesis research, which is basically trying to publish and trying to get across whatever you're doing during your PhD years. And the final 2 years is clinical rotation. So basically now you're coming back to medicine to finish. And then after that is residency application and postdoc application. So this is basically the 8 years, 8.5 years. What's different usually is there's 4 years of graduate school. Some people do 4 years, some people do 5 years, some people do 6 years. So that could be the game changer between 8 years to 10 years overall. But the average is 8.5. So a lot of you guys ask, so what is the breakdown? So a lot of you guys, well, all of you guys right now are here, which is college. So some of you guys in the beginning, some of you guys finished college already. So typically, you go through your 4 years, you take your prereqs, you take your MCAT, and you have a research and you have experience. Great. So now MD PhD is here. So it's 2 years of medicine, 4 to 6 years of research, and then 2 years back to medical school. After that, many individuals go through this path. I would say probably 80 to 90%. You go through this path. Residency, which is 3 to 5 years, depending on what type of residency you want to do. So residency is internship, is what you're trying to actually specialize in. And then fellowship is some specialties within that specialty. So for example, if you do internal medicine, a fellowship will be like cardiology, things like that. Other individuals, if they realize, hey, I went to medical school, I actually don't like patients. A lot of people, many of those individuals will go through postdoc years, which is basically intense research under a PI, just so that you can be independent. After you do that, then some people go the academic route. A lot of people go to industry. It depends on what you're trying to do. But this is a typical breakdown. So how does this differ from MD and PhD? So this is a typical MD PhD path. This is a typical college MD path right here. MD PhD on the top. So for MD path, you finish your 4 years, prereqs, MCAT, great. Then you go through medical school. Medical school is 4 years. It's structured. After that, you do residency. So the difference here is it's 4 to 6 years of research. And here's PhD. How does that differ? The 8 of you guys say you would do PhD. So basically, you cut out the 2 years, and then the 4 to 6 years of research. And then you do postdoc, and then you do in the industry or academia. So that's the difference between these. Again, if you guys have any questions, put those in the chat. Cooper and Bianca will get through those. Or if we doing our Q&A, we'll get through those. But this is the difference. This is the big three, basically. This is the paths if you're trying to do MD, PhD, or MD, PhD overall. So what areas of research do we pursue? A lot of you guys asked this question as well. So most of us do biomedical sciences, which is basically genetics, immunology. So I do microbiology. Individuals do biology. There's also computational. Something what Cooper does. So, and I use some we actually have biomedical engineering as well. So 9% do that. And there's also PhDs. Many schools, typically schools attached to undergrad, have these other PhD career paths, PhD paths, which is like health policy, epidemiology, public health. But you have to be careful here because this is a select few schools that have this. You have to do your research. For example, the Harvards, the Case Westerns. So typically schools are big and have a huge undergrad where you can actually do this research. We'll have these other disciplines where you can do your research in population health, history, or psychology. But specific, most programs will stick to these two up here, biomedical sciences or engineering. Very important distinction here. You have to do your research and know if a medical school offers it, PhD, or not. So where do we end up? Where do most of us end up? We mostly end up academic medical centers, such as UT Southwestern. There's also a select that end up in industry, some in private practice, or they decide, research is not for me. Federal agencies, NIH, Research Institute, consulting, law, finance. So this is where the beauty comes in with the MD PhD, because the PhD affords you the ability to do whatever. It just helps you learn how to think, how to analyze the situation, how to basically come up with solutions and troubleshoot. That's what a PhD is. And with that, it affords you to do whatever. And yes, the PhD is, I would say, definitely stronger than the MD, because the PhD is versatile. It allows you to go into different paths and allows you to just, your world is limitless. And now with the MD PhD, think about the endless possibilities. Now you get to see patients and do other stuff that you may be interested in. And that's probably the reason why many of us do this, because the options are limitless. So what do we actually end up doing when it comes to academic medicine, which is basically what do we end up doing when it comes to seeing patients? So most of us do internal medicine or pediatrics or pathology or neuro. That's 60% of us. But you see, there's still individuals that do dermatology, which is more competitive, individuals that do surgery, family medicine. So you see some of those here. But most of us goes to internal medicine, which has a whole specific breakdown of what fellowships that you could do. You guys can Google that as well. So basically, you can do both. This is what we're trying to get. You can do both. There's successful ones. There's people that just do research, but there's also MD PhDs that just do medicine. So, but the important thing here is it affords you the ability to choose. Choice is a powerful thing. So here's just an example of MD PhDs. So, for example, Dr. Cox here, she's the co-director of the Hopkins MSTP, but she also does research. And she sees patients. She's an oncologist. Dr. Ba here does microbiome research, but she's a geneticist. So she sees patients and she does her research. She has a lab. But this is something that you will see for many of individuals. Dr. Ajijola here does, he's a neuroscientist, but he also does research on innovation of the heart, more neurology research. And Dr. Simmert here is an overachiever here with the neurosurgery, and he does research and TBI research, traumatic brain injury research. So you see, the ability and the versatility of the MD PhD affords you to see patients, and it affords you the ability to actually do research at the same time, which is fascinating. So here at UT Southwestern, we have these fascinating individuals. Dr. Ross, who's an oncologist, but also does research on research. She has a lab, great lab. Dr. Mendel, he decided he does not like patients. He does not want to see patients anymore. So all he does is research. Well, actually, he's a pioneer research, so that's not all he does. He's a great individual and vice chair of the molecular biology department. So you see administrative work, but also doing research. And then we have Dr. Glass. Dr. Glass is amazing. He's a dermatologist, but he also does research on keloids and rare skin diseases. So you see versatility. And then we have Dr. Diaz, who's this. I'll show you guys this because this guy's an MD. However, he runs a lab and he sees patients. So just to say, you guys can please meet yourselves. So you do not have to have an MD PhD to be a physician scientist. However, the caveat is, this is an important slide. So if you get the MD, you decide, I could be a physician scientist, MD path. So you do not get the formal research training. Remember when I showed you guys the chart, you see in between 4 to 6 years of research training that you get. So you don't get formal training in medical school. No like extensive research. There's a steep learning curve, but you start your career much earlier, which means basically you finish your 4 years, you do your residency. But the caveat to that is you have to go back to fellowships and things to basically learn the methodology, learn the scientific world, and learn how to publish. If you do the combined MD PhD, it's a bit faster because it's shrunken down to 8 years. It's a formal integrated training in medicine and science. If you get them separately, now think about it. A typical PhD is about 6 to probably 7 years. And then now, if you go back, if you do the PhD first and you go to MD, now you got to do another 4 years MD. That's almost 11 years. So, but these are all paths to physician scientists. An MD going to run the lab, but a PhD can't treat. So if you do a PhD, typically you can't treat a patient. You can do like research and clinical trials and all that, but you cannot see patients because that's what the MD affords you. So another high yield slide here. Wow, I see 44 chatting. So you guys have a lot of questions, which is great. So who does MD? This is what your guys are interested in. All the other stuff is about, theoretical and important stuff, but this is what you guys are interested in. So who does MD PhD program seek? So applicants with integrity and maturity. This is very important. This is why many of the MD PhDs that you see actually took a gap year. So things like concern for others. I think everyone should be concerned about that's humanity. Leadership potential and aptitude for working with others, like significant amount of research. This last one is very, very important. Significant amount of research. Now, what does that mean? Here's what characterizes a successful MD PhD candidate. These things are major high yield. This slide is another major high yield one. 18 months of research. So this, I would say asterisk, 12 to 18 months of research. But the more research, the better. Because why? Because think about it. A school is typically invested $500,000 on you for you to graduate within 8 years. That's counting the tuition, counting the stipend. So they want to make sure that you really, really want to do this. So what they look at is your research experience. Typically summers, or you do research in your school, or for those of you that go to small schools, typically you do a gap year. And you get those 12 to 18 months of research. Recommendations, your research recommendations, community service recommendations, clinical recommendations, academic recommendations, all of that. Very important. The average, guys, do not go to Reddit or Student Doctor. Remember, average means just that. It's average. That means people are below, people are above. Standard deviation is important. It's 0.21 here, which means some people got 3.4 and got in, which means a lot of people many people also got 3.99 or not, things like that, 3.88 and got in. So it's an average. However, what matters is this, they look at holistic view. So the average MCAT, 511, which means the standard deviation here is 9.5, which means individual 503 got in, but also individual 520 got in. So again, average. Standard deviation, important. Range, important. So, however, do your best because it gets competitive every single year. I'm telling you, the average MCAT moves up every year. The average GPA moves up. That's not to scare you because what else is important? Involvement, leadership, service, organization. Very important. Also, research. That's why it's highlighted here. Research can save you from all of these other stuff. Remember that. So what does the application look like? Well, there's 3 essays. YMD, which is typical personal statement. YMD PhD, which is, you want to go MD PhD. Why actually do you want to do this? When you talk about translational research, MD being not sufficient, things like that. Describe previous research. This is important. Remember again, research. You see research like how many times here? Twice. Everything else? Once. So research, very important. You want to make sure you have that research. Why is that important? Because you have to talk about it. If someone say, oh, you did research in the summer of 2019, tell me about it. Bring me a recent habit. You have to be able to speak about it. You have to talk about the hypothesis. You have to talk about what you actually did. Very important. MD PhD interviews. Well, you interview to go to med school. So a lot of the stuff is virtual now. Probably even easier for some people. So what constitutes substantive research? We highlighted research for a reason. So sufficient research to understand what you're getting into. Very important. Remember, this is your 20s. This is the time of your life overall. Multiple summer projects, but hey, that's 2 times 4, right? That's only 8. That doesn't amount to the 12 to 18. So institutional research with professors, very important. For you guys that go to fancy Ivies or top institutions or universities, get into it. Write all the research and be like, hey, I'm interested in doing research. For those of you guys that can't, remember, now it's not, you still got time. Senior thesis research. 1 or more years pursuing gap years research. I think in the document, we highlighted prep programs. I did a prep program at Einstein. I was getting paid and I was doing research. Amazing program. NIH, RRTA, another year-long program, year or 2. Amazing thing. There's so many different programs popping up. Cornell has one. Other schools have one, just so that they can build a diverse MSTP class. Remember, take advantage of these programs because they will let you know if you really want to do this or not. Imagine going to one of these prep programs, a year program, like, I don't like research. Then that means you could just go apply to MD. or you can just be like, I don't like patients anymore. You can just go apply a PhD, but you have that choice. Remember, very important. Proficiency with testing and hypothesis. That's what the long research thing will allows you. Communicate in science, presentations, publications are not. Remember, publications are not required, but you know, it helps. It helps. It shows that basically you put in enough work to actually have a body of for an article. So very important as well. So stats. Remember, average. So this is basically showing applicants versus matriculants. So this is for GPAs. Remember, some people, there's someone who got 3.9 and didn't get in, but there's also people that got 3.5 and got in. So remember, it's about holistic review, your research, your involvement, your MCAT, your GPA. All of that matters. Very important. Okay, guys? So what's the timeline? A lot of you guys are post-bac individuals, so you're probably behind here a little bit. So typically, applications open May 1st. And then, you know, you can submit basically June 1st. Remember, early is on time. But do not submit something that no one else has looked at. Make sure your research statements, your MD statement, your YMD, at least someone who went through the process, look at it for you and let you know if you got the right content. Very important. Your activity section, remember, humble brag. You have to let them know, like, yo, I'm great. Like look at me. Like, I've done this and I know what I'm doing. Very important. You guys want to make sure, like, you know what you're getting yourself into, and your application tells that story. Okay. So very important. Typically, interviews start probably July, August, and then it goes on until like January. You know, for example, you just have what's decided today, probably by next week, people will get their stuff. Some people do rolling admissions. So it depends. Okay. So this is just a compilation of what we talked about before. So what do you consider when choosing a school? Research. Again, research, very important. The support, whether it's MSTP, which is NIH supported, or MD PhD. Some schools have MD PhD, some schools have MSTP. There's about 55 MSTP. And we'll talk about that more when we're doing Q&A. Curriculum integration, your preference. Presence and strength of your PhD area might be important. Location, remember, it's 8.5 years of your life. Do you like the city? Where do you want to go for 8.5 years to live? Very important. You want to make sure you're comfortable in the area. Outreach and service, maybe important. Outcomes. I think I put here somewhere the support. Very important. That should be here. Training support, which is counseling services. Sometimes you may want someone to talk to about your struggles and obstacles. Very important. You see, the last thing I put here, prestige. Why? Because no one's going to ask you 10 years in the future, where did you actually do your medical training? Because it's all about the work that you put in. Very important. Same thing with you guys in undergrad. I went to University of Albany. Probably half of you don't even know where that is or what it is called. It's just Albany, but you don't know where the school is. Some of my colleagues went to the Harvards. Some of them went to the MITs. We're still here. So important. It's about the work that you put in. Put in that work. Very important. The research and all those statistics that I gave you. Very important. One thing I want to talk to you guys. We reached out to the math chapters. Some of you guys may know what the math chapter, Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students, which is the undergrad version of SNMA. So this is because, just like medicine, there's a huge disparity when it comes to individuals who are in MSTP. For example, before 2005, we see Black, African American, Hispanics, Native Americans, it's less than 10%. So after 2014, it has increased, but it's still not the greatest. Compared to the patient population, about 25%, there's a huge disparity. This is why we started this committee, which is, as you see here, there's Cooper, there's myself, there's also there's a bunch of individuals that got together. It was it's important that we create a diverse cultural environment where everyone gets opportunity to actually be physicists and scientists, because it's a diverse world and we need diverse solutions to address the diverse problems that we have. So that's what the MSTP Ready Committee does. and these presentations is one of our staple ones. So I will stop sharing so we can see everyone's face. And yeah, so sorry guys, that took 30 minutes. But Emma's here. I'll allow Emma to actually introduce herself, and then we'll go on from there.
What did you guys say? What should I say?
Talk about your life, talk about where you're from, talk about
Okay.
what are you interested in, and what year you are, and things like that.
Okay. So hi guys. It's great to see all of you virtually. My name is Emma, and I'm a first year MD PhD student. I just graduated last spring, which is pretty hard to believe, from Carnegie Mellon, and I was an engineering undergrad major, and I'm interested in immunology.
Awesome.
So, and I'm from Florida, if that counts.
Awesome. Great. So actually, before we used to be like, we had questions that we wanted people to, so I will do the same thing. Basically, I have a list of questions for our MSTPs. After that, we can open up anyone, and you can have your camera. Let's make this, personable and good so that everyone's questions could be answered. We answer a lot of these questions with the FAQ, but it's good everyone's in the same environment so we can actually talk and engage overall. So I guess my first question is for you guys. So what were your expectations of MD PhD, and how have those expectations changed now that you're a first year or a fifth year MD PhD candidate? So we'll start with Emma. You're the newly minted MD PhD candidate. So MD PhD trainee. So we'll start with you.
I mean, my expectations were super different because I didn't expect to be completely online for my first year of med school. But I don't know if that's really a fair comparison. I think everything else has basically been what I thought it was. Certainly med school is different from what I thought it was going to be, but I was always more focused on the research than I was the medical school. So I didn't spend all that much time investigating like classes and how med school works and things like that. But for the most part, it's what I wanted it to be. I've been really happy, especially here, with how much they like try and keep the science and research present even throughout your medical school years. And it's always really nice to have such a great group of people around you that you can talk to so that you're not in just a group of 200 plus med students. You've got like 10 little other people that are going to be with you for 8 years. So you should probably make friends with them. So yeah, in general, it was about what I expected aside from all the COVID things.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Cooper?
So in terms of like what I was expecting, I think that the PhD part, I had gotten a pretty good idea what it would be like from doing research. The medical school part was a little unexpected, but still fun. Yeah, I don't know. It was, I didn't come in with a lot of expectations personally, so I didn't really have many to be upturned or confirmed. Sorry, I know that's a non-answer, but I really didn't have much expectation other than this combination is what I want to be doing, and whatever it's like, I'll probably enjoy it because I've liked all the other aspects so far.
Thank you, Cooper. Bianca?
I'm not quite sure exactly what it was that I expected before I came here, but I do think I had myself much better prepared for the PhD portion of the program than the MD portion of the program. I underestimated how much time I would have to really be studying all the time in medical school, just because I didn't have to do that as much in undergrad. I was able to be a bit more balanced than I was during the preclinical years. But like everyone says, like the the culture here is great. That was as I anticipated. Everyone's very supportive, all that good stuff. So
I could take this question as well. So for me, I just thought it would be a continuation of undergrad. Oh boy, was I wrong. Like, you come in basically, for example, UTSW Western, and like biochemistry is 10 days. And then you have anatomy on top of that. And then you have another class called cells. And then you have, and it just keeps going. And then you're like, I know you guys are like, biochemistry in 10 days? Yes, it was 10 days, like learning everything. And it wasn't like just like learning and like, it was like applied. And you had to understand things deeper. Like undergrad, I was used to things being like, oh, what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis. And then choices would be like, photosynthesis is what plants use, animals. And then you're like, oh, okay, I could choose. I could guess. Like, I was used to that. But then medical school, they'd be like, this drug targets X, and then what does the Y do? And then you're just sitting there like, whoa, I gotta know what X is, I gotta know what Y is, I gotta know what Z is, and then I gotta come back again to figure out how does that relate to this. So that's what called higher order questions. So I wasn't expecting that. So the first class was a struggle. I would say like I got comfortable thinking, like, I got comfortable being like, yeah, I may not be the smartest person here. I was like, this is actually a humbling moment for me overall, knowing that I got to study. I got to make sure I'm putting in the work for this. So I think that was something I didn't expect. But overall, I would say, you do get the chance to learn about the human body, which is like fascinating. You get to learn about everything. You will get to see things in a whole different light, which is even more better. And especially, you get to see the differences between the MD and the PhD, which is one more like memorization. The other one's more like, how can I figure some specific out? And how can I go by, this is not working. How can I actually navigate that realm? And it makes you a stronger MD, and MD makes you a stronger PhD overall. So I think that's what I would say. And that next question, a lot of people they always ask about grades, GPAs, and stuff like that. So what do you think made you a strong applicant? And we'll go back to Bianca, and then we'll go Cooper, and then we'll go Emma.
Sorry, can you say that again? I was answering a question.
So what do you think made you a strong applicant? If you could talk about GPA and stuff like that, and for individuals here, transparency. If you could talk about your numbers and things like that as well.
Yeah, totally.
Like what you thought about when you were applying, like what came through your mind?
Yeah, so I was very paranoid about not getting in because my scores are fine but not great. So I had a 3.5 something GPA, and I got a 33 on the old MCAT, which was fine but below the median accepted for MD PhD. But I think what really helped me was I had a lot of research experience. So I started working in labs during my sophomore year of college. I worked in labs for 2.5 years during undergrad. And then because I hadn't taken the MCAT by the time I graduated, I took planned to take 2 gap years, ended up being 3 because of family stuff that came up in the first year. But having 3 full years of research time in a good lab was definitely very beneficial. But like we've been saying, MD PhD programs really emphasize research. So me having a really strong background in research and having worked through, some of the hurdles, I guess, I think made me a more desirable applicant because I showed that I can, persevere, which is a lot of what makes you successful in this. So yeah, I think that's what made me a stronger applicant.
Awesome, thank you. Cool.
So as an applicant, I had some pretty good numbers. I triple majored in physics, neurobiology, and biochemistry. I had good GPA at 3.82. I got a. I took it right when it started. They got very, very high on the new MCAT. I don't remember what it was. So I had very good numbers, but I only had about 6 months of research experience to start with. At the application time, I was working full-time research after my senior year. So I actually had much lower research experience than a lot of other people. So my numbers helped make up for that some, but I also think being able to talk well about your research and the fact that I was doing computational stuff and was able to get going fairly quickly without having to learn a whole bunch of techniques beyond the coding I had already learned, made that start much quicker. So I was able to discuss my research well.
Emma?
Sorry, just finishing typing there. Yeah, I think I was a good kind of well-rounded candidate, I guess. I had good numbers. I think that an engineering background was a strength. And I did spend a lot of time in undergrad doing research, but I was a double major and engineering, so I couldn't spend all that much time during the semester doing research, which I think was a little bit of a setback as opposed to some other people. And I didn't take a gap year. So my really immersive research experience was over the summers, which isn't as long as it could be. So yeah, I think it was a combination of things of numbers and research. I don't know, that's not all that helpful, but if anybody has specific questions, just let me know.
So for me, coming from undergrad, I had a good GPA. It was 3.75. My MCAT was a 28, which on the old MCAT is like a 506 or 505. I remember. But what helped me was I had 2 years of post-bac research doing the prep program. As I type, like the prep program, like the preps programs, like when you do those programs, all the MSTP directors see is like, whoop, all right, MD PhD, because they know what it takes for those programs, for you to go through those programs. Like you're doing 9 to 5 research, 9 to 8 research, like heavy research, and you get like exposure to what it's like to be a physician scientist in training overall. So I would say that actually helped me just shoot to the front of every single program that I applied to. I was getting interviews from like programs that I didn't even expect. And like when I first got my MCAT score, I was just like, I'm not getting anywhere. And then my MD PhD director was like, you'll be okay. It's like, you got the research. And then that's what really helped me overall. Like when we tell you guys holistic, it's really holistic. If you don't have the research, however, it can pull you down, especially if you don't have like the like at least like I would say like 12 months of research, because that shows that you'll be dedicated overall. And I think that's what helped me, become a competitive applicant. And a lot of programs were able to basically ignore the low MCAT score and focus more on this person actually did 2 years of research. They did summer research programs, and the MCAT is great. I mean, the GPA is great, and I had a whole ton of involvement, so which was also helpful. So well-rounded individual overall. And I think my next and final question is, why MD PhD? Why not just MD? And also, like, see some of the questions. Did you apply to just MD or just PhD? So why did you apply to both programs? What do you hope to do with the MD PhD? And we'll start with Emma.
Yeah, so I always knew that I would only apply both because I really only decided that I wanted to do MD PhD in my freshman year of college. So I thought that I was just going to go into science research, and then after kind of realizing what I wanted to do, I knew that I wouldn't have only applied MD because I wanted to be able to have like scientific curiosity and then also be able to use how I was treating people and what I was learning from them to inform that science, to inform that treatment. So I always wanted to have both. It wasn't really a debate for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I started having an interest in science in high school, and I thought, great, I should get a medical degree because I thought that's what you do if you like science and you like helping people. And it was only once I got to college that I even knew that MD PhD was something that existed, because one of my undergrad PIs was an MD PhD in psychiatry. And so once I learned that it was an option and I had research experience, I got into research only because my major required that I did research as part of my major requirements. But once I learned it was an option, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So that was pretty much it. I never really wavered after that. So.
Awesome. Cooper?
Yeah, so I started off not thinking I was going to do biology at all, to be honest. Started off thinking I was going to go into particle physics. And as I was going through, I ended up doing more and more biophysics, thermodynamics, and adding on like neurobiology, more and more biology stuff. And so I ended up getting certified as an EMT. And I'm like, man, I really am enjoying both. I'm not seeing how they go together. This is I wish I could do both, but I can only do MD or PhD. Man, I really wish I could do both. And then I found out you could, and I'm like, oh, that seems obvious. I'm going to do that. So that's sort of how I ended up there. Yeah.
Awesome. So for me, I didn't even know, similar to Bianca, I didn't know what MD-PhD was. I knew I want to do medicine, but I didn't even know when to apply. And that's a lot of similar issues with a lot of underrepresented minorities we deal with. Is we want to do something, but we don't know how to get there. So key number one, get a mentor. Very, very important. Someone who can help you save time and a lot of stuff. Key number two, I didn't know. So when I learned about MD PhD finally during like January of my senior year, I only had 3 summers of research. I was just like, how can I actually make this happen? So 3 summers of research, and when I was speaking to an MD PhD program, because I called them, they're like, nah, that's too little. So I started applying to programs. I learned about the prep program. I applied like 6 programs out of those, and I got into one of them. So I think for me, as soon as I learned about MD PhD, it reminded me of like all the research I was doing and how impactful that was. But also, I wanted to help individuals more on the individual level, because the PhD is more like a populational level approach of changing things, while the MD is more individual. You see a patient, you help them, treat them. And MD is like you do research on a problem that could probably potentially do a diagnostic, preventative, or a treatment methodology. So I like that. And I like the options. Like choices are important. So I was willing to go through 8 years to be able to do this. I was willing to go through 8 years of like just learning how to think like a scientist, but also learn about all the diseases possible overall, because it's fascinating. Anatomy, the first time you see your brain, all of that was so amazing. Someone just asked, how do you get a mentor? There's 3 of us, well, 4 of us here. Well, so pick one. Like we have our email. You have my email. Let me know what I can do for you. Like very important. Don't be afraid to reach out to programs and ask to speak to the MD PhD director. It can be help. It can help you overall. Like as soon as I knew MD PhD, I went to a conference and learned about UTSW. I was on the phone with Dr. Zinn, our MD PhD director, for like a whole hour. He was telling me about Dallas and why it's a great place to live in. So, and now I'm here. Like, you never know where your connections lead to. LinkedIn, find MD PhDs there and ask them to be a mentor. Like, don't be afraid. It's always a no until until you ask. Like, very important. So I said a lot. So now I actually would like to open up, questions to you guys to ask questions. Because I'm sure your questions are more straight through and just ask us anything that you would like. And we'll be here as long as you guys have questions. But yeah, you guys have any questions? You can unmute yourself, and ask.
This is just a follow-up question. Oh, sorry. Someone just raised their hand, so I just talked. But this is a follow-up question to what you were saying about like finding mentors. I just always find it so much harder to just like send the email. But like, what's maybe like something encouraging, or what would you recommend would be like a simple way to reach out to like talk with people?
So I would say, typically for medical students, what's simpler? They're like, hey, I see your MD PhD. I've been fascinated with this path. I've done research. I've did this. I'm interested in MD PhD. I type the CV. It's fine. Or you don't. It doesn't. It's fine. They're like, oh, can I talk to you? Like a lot of people, probably some of those individuals here I've spoken to before. And then we'll reply. Like, we're busy, but if we see someone and we know that, wow, that person actually reached out to me, we want to reach back out and help as many people get through this path as possible. For faculty, email to be like, hey, I see you do research on this. Wow, fascinating. I see you just published this paper and it talks about it. Be like, wow, this person actually engaged. That's if you want to do rotation in the lab or stuff like that. But also, like, just be like, hey, I'm interested you do pediatric diseases, but also do this MD PhD. How do you balance both? I'm interested in speaking to you on the phone. When do you have time to speak to an individual interested in MD PhD? Do not be afraid. Like, a lot of my mentors are just like typing emails away, like, hey, can you mentor me, please? Like, I'm clueless. I want to know what it's like to do community service here, what it's like to do surgery, what it's like to, and like, you may get some people just not replying back to you, but also you will get people that reply back to you, and those are the people that you want. Those are the people that will help you move on to the next stage. Okay? I'm not sure if Bianca, Cooper, or Emma has anything else to say.
Yeah.
We'll move on.
So one critical thing is always trying. It used to be trying to ask them to meet in person, but nowadays, until COVID's over, it'll be asking them for a Zoom call or phone call. Always try to get request in-person time if you can, and that's much more successful than just emailing back and forth repetitively and never hearing anything. So always try and schedule a time and come in and be like, does Wednesday from 5 to 5:30 work for you? Like a definite time would be great. They'll almost for sure respond back, no, how about this other time? But trying to get something definite, like person-to-person interaction instead of electronic communication, purely because these professors are often getting like 3,000 or 4,000 emails a day. So getting around that is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
Oh, sorry. Just like mention, I know this was the case in my undergrad, and I think it can always be helpful. Like if you're really interested in someone and they haven't emailed you back, just email them a second time. A lot of people don't even like look at their email unless they get 2 of them, or they're just so swamped with emails that it gets lost. If you're really, really interested in them, just ping them again, and they'll probably like email you back and thank you, like, oh, I can't believe I forgot to respond to you. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people want to see that continued interest. So if there's a person that you really want to get in contact with, don't be afraid to email them twice.
Yeah, definitely. Just quick echo of that. My PhD mentor, he screen shares in our lab meetings, and he has over 200,000 unread emails, which is terrifying. So please do email again. Also, when I was getting ready to apply, I found an MD PhD neurosurgeon. I was like, that's so cool. I really want to talk to this guy. I emailed his administrator every week for probably 4 months before I was able to get 15 minutes on his schedule. And then he ended up offering me a job. So, being persistent pays off. So.
Awesome. So we have three questions. So I'll start with Lanisha. Sorry if I butcher your guys' names. And then we'll go to Venkata, and then we go Afu.
All right, thanks. So my question is more, I kind of want to describe myself as an applicant and then get a little bit of advice on if I should do a post-bac program or anything else and what I can do to kind of improve myself and be more competitive. So, and I'm going to be very transparent about like my stats that I'm not exactly proud of. So, I had a lot of trouble in undergrad with like health issues and like home insecurity, which really impacted my GPA. So let's say I had like below a 3.0, and then I decided, okay, what can I do? Then I decided to do a master's program in biology and do some research. And my GPA has improved, but it's still not like, super competitive. It's right now like at a 3.4. And now I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to keep doing research, get like clinical experience, leadership, community service, which is all stuff I'm involved in, but I'm still feeling insecure about my GPA. And I'm wondering, should I do like a post-bac program after I complete my master's? Um, and if so, like what kind of post-bac should I be looking at? Should I be like, I need like some guidance on what else I can do to like, I guess, strengthen my academic portion with my GPA, and if I even should do anything more or should I not? I don't know. And I would really like some guidance on that.
Okay, I could take it first. So typically for GPAs, when you get the masters, the programs will look at your master's grades. It's always like, okay, this person did this during this time. Okay, now that they even went further than the masters, and now they got the GPA this level. So knowing basically that, and of course they will see your story. You write that in your personal statement, you write it somewhere else, and they'll see your undergrad GPA. But after you pass undergrad and you do a master's, the program will just look at your. Most of them will look at your master's mostly. Like I would say 80% more than you think, because they will see the trajectory and they see that you have improved drastically. So that's one. A 3.4, I would say it's still application range overall, but the research will be what saves you overall. Because throughout the time, you may have all the involvements, the clinical, the shadowing, and all of those things. But I don't think you actually need another master's to get more grades, because you probably get a 3.6, 3.7, even 3.8. That will still be within the same range. So what I would suggest is, if you have 18 months of research, because the more the better, because then they can overlook everything else. If you have 18 months of research, whether it's through your thesis and your master's program, then you could schedule a time to speak to, for example, our dean overall and be like, hey, how is this? And then he'll let you know. But I would say if you have 18 months of research, at least 100 hours of community service, and 100 hours of what is it called? The clinical shadowing, I think you're ready to apply. Oh, yeah, MCAT. And your MCAT is like within the range or the average. I think you'll be ready to apply, honestly, because you have shown that you even went beyond and you did a master's. So, and that's my advice for you. I think if you're going to get more research, do the preps that I did, which is the postbac research education program. Because some of those preps actually allow you to take classes that count towards the GPA. Some of them don't allow you to be GPA, but you have to see which prep program. There's like 30 different programs. So don't do another man. Like you don't have to do the other preps, because those preps will do the same thing as what your masters did, and you have to pray for those. Do the preps that we did, which is the NIH ones, and then again.
All right, thank you so much. If I was to apply for and let's say I'm graduating right now in December, when should I be looking at like prep programs to apply?
Now.
Right now? Okay.
Usually the application starts in December and they close like, some of them close at March, some of them close February. There's 30 programs. They all differ. I remember for Einstein, I applied like February, around early February, and the application was due like late February. So go. I think I attached. I think we attached the link on the FAQ. Go look at each program has their own application process. So go through and look at those. Very important. They will let you. It will have all the information what you need to do. Typically, if you already apply to masters, you will have everything that they need anyway. So yeah, go apply ASAP. Apply to at least 10 programs because it's very competitive and get it. Because once you get that prep under your belt, you can just do a year program and then competitive, like very competitive.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anyone? Oh, we have more hands. Okay, I see hands. I feel sorry. I'm butchering your name most likely.
Afu, you're good. You're good. All right. So I have a quick question about so pretty much like I just want you guys to walk through your timeline of how you started to prepare. Like I'm applying to MD PhD this year, and I wanted to just get like a glimpse of like what you guys' timeline looked like when you were applying. Like what did you do during the month of January? Like when did you start requesting for recommendation letters and stuff like that? Like when did you start putting together your personal statement and all that stuff? So when did you take your MCAT during, like in the cycle you were applying, when did you take your MCAT?
So Emma just did hers. So Emma.
I did mine kind of late. So I did mine late for an MD, but I was told that it was fine for an MD PhD application because they're a little bit more flexible with the MCATs. When did I take mine? At the end of July, I think. It was in the middle of July. Yeah. So I spent towards the end of July. Anyways, I spent most of that year, or I really started working on applications at the beginning of that year. So like personal statements and starting essays and stuff. And then really got into it after school let out and started doing, so I did all my MCAT studying over that summer, and I was also working full time. And I know a lot of people do like completely dedicated studying, and I'm sure that works really well, but it's not absolutely necessary. I scored pretty highly, and yeah, that's what I did. And then you end up getting secondaries back in like the middle of that. I got them back in the middle of that summer. And so you're doing secondary applications, which are just more MD PhD essays, essentially. I was doing them for the last couple weeks before I took my MCAT, and then a couple weeks after that. If you need any clarification on that messy timeline, let me know.
Now that's good. I just wanted to ask just maybe one more question. Like, so
Yeah.
when you're, the main difference from MD PhD and MD is the research statement, right? And the MD essay as well, MD PhD essay as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so other than that, that's the main difference that you have, right? Like,
Yeah.
and did you apply to any backup schools like regular MD schools or DO schools just in case?
No, I didn't apply to any regular MD schools. I only went MD PhD. And basically my plan was like, I'll apply this year, and if I don't get in anywhere, then I will take a gap year and do research and then go back and apply again.
Makes sense.
Yep. Part of the reason why I applied to an aggressively high number of schools was because I only wanted to do it once. So I just tried to increase my my odds as much as I could, which ended up working. I wouldn't necessarily recommend applying to 30 something programs like I did, because it took me like 6 weeks to finish all the secondaries, which was a nightmare while I was working full time. Not to mention that it's extremely costly. So that.
So
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, if you don't know, there are secondary applications. They send you, once you finish the prep, I didn't know this when I applied. So once you turn in the application, they send you a second additional set of forms to fill out for that school specifically beyond the common application. So you're aware, there is more work than just the common app. Although the common app does play a big role.
Yeah, that actually leads up to a follow-up question about. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
So I was just going to talk about the first thing was so I studied basically January. I studied for MCAT January all the way up to April. While at the same time I was writing my essays, my 15 activities, and you know, if you are a URM, make sure you click that you're disadvantaged. It helps at times. But also I did the fee assistance program. So the fee assistance program is basically they help the first 15 schools are free. They give you half of them the MCAT, and you know you gotta be poverty line and all of that stuff, and you know you have to show documents. But the secondaries are all free. So I applied to 30 schools for basically $700. Sorry, Bianca. But like, so try the fee assistance program. If you're independent or if you're URM or if you, well, it's mostly about poverty and you know stuff like that. They will pay for your stuff. 15 schools, I think that was 20 schools for free. So apply. The fee assistance program is by AMC. So, and then when it came to March, I mean, April, May, I took my MCAT, I knew my score. Very important. I knew my score, so I knew how to apply. I applied in ranges. So, in ranges mean basically that, you know, some lower tier, some middle tier, some high tier. Very important. Don't just think even if you got like a high score that you're gonna apply to a high. No, it doesn't work that way. You never know who rejects you. Some low tier schools definitely rejected me, and I'm still salty about that. But like it's very important that you know stratify your schools, and then like I submitted mine like basically middle of July. So everyone have their time range, but I would say like do not try to go all the way past like I would say September and later, because most of the schools are rolling admissions and things fill up fast, and there's a lot of competitive individuals out there. Very important. So also one thing about disadvantage essay is it doesn't you don't have to be a URM. You can just say I'm disadvantaged because of these experiences. You know, I had problems with as you mentioned with your story. That counts overall. So it's anything that makes you feel like yeah, I'm disadvantaged because of these reasons, because they will look at that. So make sure if you feel like disadvantaged, whether it's through academic means or financial means or whatever means you feel like, definitely put that forth and let them be the judge overall if you are disadvantaged. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, so you also don't have to do like you can, if you end up deciding late, apply the year even if you think you might not be ready, and apply again the next year when you feel more ready. That was my original plan. I ended up getting in the first year I applied, but I graduated and started studying for the MCAT, took the MCAT August 30th, submitted my application September 27th, and then immediately turned around and started doing secondaries. So it is possible if you decide late to do that. I would highly recommend not doing that and planning ahead. But that being said, if you're like, I don't know if I can finish this year and finish the application, you probably can. You just might not get in the first round and apply again the second year after doing your post-doc masters, whatever you planned.
Awesome. Any other questions we have? I'm sure you guys have questions, whether it's specific or not. I think it would be good for us, to gauge, because many of the individuals may have the same questions, honestly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm currently a senior at in college, and I've been doing research for a while now, but I was just, I guess, I know you guys have said literally everything, and this is just so timely, honestly. But I think it's still a repeat of everything that everyone has said. But is there anything that you would, I guess, advise? And again, you guys had literally said everything. But what would you? Because I definitely don't want to rush it. And listening to what you guys have already said, I would really like to, I guess, strengthen my application. And yeah, but like again, you guys literally said everything. But if there's anything else you would like to add, yep.
One of the things, make sure you really want to do this fast because it is 8.5 years. I mean, people do leave. We had one person leave out of us. I think it's probably what out of the past 8 years. I don't know, but like, make sure you want to do it. Make sure that research is, something that you want to do. But other than that, if you've been doing like years of research at your school and you got the grades and the thing, go for it. Plan ahead when you asking for recommendations, when you're gonna MCAT, submit stuff, work activities, personal statements. It's very important to basically know you want to do research. You don't have to know that specific types of research because most programs work on like an umbrella program, which means you apply to the PhD program and whatever department you want to do, you figure out later. That's how most schools work. I mean, it'd be cool. It's cool to say, oh, I'm interested in microbiology research. Here's why, and these 3 professors, but it doesn't really matter. You can say what type of research, just to show them like, oh, I actually Googled your school and these people. So, but know that you want to do it. It is 8.5 years of your life. And don't do it because it's a paid program. You don't have to pay for med school. Because trust me, you will pay with your sweat. So, yeah. But just know what you want to do.
I think something that I wanted to mention, probably this is like most salient in my mind because I just got out of these applications. Don't neglect like classic med school things. Like we talk a lot about science and that is extremely important. And I would definitely say for these programs, it's probably more important than like your medical school application by itself. But your medical school application does need to be acceptable. So make sure that you put in things like significant clinical experiences, why you want to be a doctor specifically, because you're going to have to write a whole essay about that. What has led you to decide that, different volunteering opportunities, extracurriculars, all that stuff is really, really important, especially for the med school application. And if the med school, comes back to the MD PhD program and says, we won't take them, then there's not much that the MD PhD program can do.
100%. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Pages?
Oh, sorry. I have one more piece of
Cooper,
advice. So this is something that can get left by the wayside as we like stack it. I know you guys get more and more stacked up on you in terms of what you should do, but eat healthy, sleep, and work out. And like it makes you so much happier. It makes you more productive and all that crap too. But like that's far less important than you feel better and are better and don't end up going into healthcare while maintaining a whole bunch of unhealthy habits, which is a little, it messes with your head a little bit to do that. Like advise your patient, oh, get 8 hours of sleep a night and then not do it. But that's a little my personal soapbox. But definitely take care of yourself. It's really easy to let yourself get consumed by research, by applications, by whatever. Always make sure to, at bare minimum, take care of you.
Yeah, I would just like to underscore that because I burnt myself out pretty hard by ignoring my mental and physical health. I gave myself shingles during my application season, so like just don't be like me. Take care of yourself, please.
Awesome. Okay, Beatrice.
Yes, I got kind of 2 different questions, but they kind of tie together. Let's say you go into the MD and PhD and do the 2 years of med school and then go to the 4 years of PhD and don't want to go back to the MD. can you still get your PhD without getting the MD?
Yes. You could just be like, I just want to do PhD. Because most of the problem would be if you basically do the MD and then you continue on and then you realize, I don't want to do PhD. Because remember, the PhD is paid for no matter what. The problem is the first 2 years of MD, the MD PhD program pays for it. So if you decide to quit, some program will have you pay it back. Other program will be like, eh. But the problem is not if you want to just do PhD and forego the MD, because but yeah, it's complicated. That would be specific, I would say. But people do it, like people do it, but it's rare, but people do it.
Yeah, and I asked that because more specifically to what I planned, I knew I want to get into a PhD, but I never considered MD until I saw this talk, and then I didn't know it was possible to get MD and PhD before. So I'm still on the fence about the clinical part because I never planned to do that. It's not something that I desire, but it's something that now I'm considering. So what do you think I should do to kind of get a taste for that clinical part? Because up until now, I don't know if I can do that, but I think it would be helpful to try to do something just to get a taste of it.
So I would say there's a lot of opportunities, even virtual shadowing. Speak to some physicians, see what they do. Learn about different specialties and see if you really like medicine or not. But sometimes it takes a while to be like, oh, I actually like this stuff. So, like, yeah, don't just do stuff because you just learn about it. Like, just like you learn about PhD by doing, learning, getting into the field. Learn about MD. Learn about what it takes. Learn about if you got the prerequisite. Learn about what's the day-to-day of certain specialties. And do you even like seeing dead body? Something like that, because anatomy. But like, learn if it is for you overall. Because you could decide you could do your PhD and learn something cool in your PhD. Be like, wow, I need to get my MD. That's still fine. Remember, like, in life, there's no rush. Just take your time, do your stuff, and if you don't like it right now, maybe you will learn. Maybe, or if you don't know if you like it right now, you get exposed to it later again, and you like it, and maybe that's the time. That maybe that was always the time that was destined for you to do the MD. So I would say, right now, take the time to learn about it, and try to find some virtual shadowing opportunities, and speak to a few physician scientists or physicians, and see if PhD is the right path for you, MD, PhD, or whatever you want to do. But I would say learn about the path that you want to take.
Hey, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we have Daniel, and then we have Aya.
I had a question about interviews. So I'm applying this upcoming cycle, and perhaps this question is premature, but do you think that interviews are going to be virtual next year? And if so, how would you prepare for a virtual interview?
So I would not count on them being in person, mostly because even if it's like everyone in Southwestern will likely have been vaccinated at that point, because we're a medical institution and we have interactions with patient populations. Most of us are vaccinated already, but requiring incoming students to have received the vaccine is probably unreasonable unless the distribution pattern changes greatly in the next couple months. It's unlikely we could require it, and basically the virtual interviewing, you'll dress up in like a suit and have normal interview-esque conversations just over Zoom. So pretty much all the previous advice applies, plus some like small things about how to do, how they want you to do your video chats, but they'll send you packets and stuff explaining everything when the time comes around. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would not expect them to require in-person interviews. Some of them might let you opt in, but I find it unlikely they would require it.
So I would add to that. Yeah, I don't think there's. I think programs like virtual because they can interview more individuals. So that's one good thing. And and it reduces the barriers that many individuals have, which is you have to travel to a school. Like if you're in New York, you have to go all the way to Cali, for example. That work when I could just sit here and do it. But I would say interviewing falls under three different things. Know yourself. One, know everything in your application. Know every single little thing. Trust me, someone will be like, oh, tell me about that little thing that you wrote about there. Oh, cool. And then if you go there and you're stuttering, wrong. Know about the school and what you wrote about the school in your secondary. Very important. Know about the school. Because if they be like, oh, why here? Some guy will be like, oh, tell me about, you wrote about this guy. What does he actually do? If they're really, really being like an ass, like they will be like that specific. But it's also good if you know about the school because it leads to my third point, questions. Like it's very important. Like if you're talking to someone, oh, what did your research do? Oh, well, cool. Because sometimes they give you the people that you'll meet beforehand. Sometimes you don't. But it's always important to have questions in the back of your mind. Oh, tell me about the collaborative environment about your school. Oh, tell me about the patient interactions. Tell me about have questions. That's I would say the three things: yourself, the school, and questions. Those will help you stand out. Because if you have questions, they'll be like, this person really cares. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, when in doubt, always ask your interviewer about themselves, about their research. People love to talk about themselves.
Yeah, they do. Awesome. Aya?
Hi. So Cooper and Bianca kind of already answered the beginning of this question, but I'd like to follow up with it. So I'm majoring in biochem, and I was hoping to second major in microbio, but that would require an extra year. And I would still do research, but as much as I am interested in second majoring, I thought that would make me a more competitive applicant, but does that really even matter? Would that be better or?
Yeah, so in general, trying to guess what other people are going to want for you to present yourself as is a losing game. If you want to do a second major, do a second major. If you don't want to do it and want to apply earlier, do that. Trying to second guess someone else guessing about you is just it's not going to work, and ultimately you're going to be happier doing things you enjoy. Yes, you need to have these certain requirements filled, but if you're like, man, I really want to study this other thing, but it'll take more time, that's a very personal question that I don't think our small panel is really set to answer for you. I think doing some soul searching, figuring out what you really want to do is the only way forward there. Don't base major life decisions for yourself on what you think other people will want checked on a piece of paper. Some of those things have to happen, but they're like small things, like a course here and there, not your major, not your second major. Yeah.
So I think one thing that Bianca wrote to you was very interesting because so if you're doing it for research and to say an extra year, like I would say apply to a prep program where you get paid to be there for a year. Like I don't think you need to go to undergrad, pay extra tuition, and then pay to be in a apply to prep programs and apply as many as you can. Or ask your PI, hey, you gonna pay me? Like, because honestly, if you already have the research aptitude and like you have the research, years and stuff like that, then I don't think just do stuff that you like. For example, like people in pre-med, like you don't have to do biology major. It makes it easier later, but like you don't have to. You can do English major and still get the requisite. So it's about making sure that, at the end of the day, keep your passions, keep what you want to do, and know why you want to do stuff. Like you don't have, if you like your second major and you really want to learn about microbiome, great, do it. But if it's just one of those more of like I think it will look good. Or like, I need an extra year. There's other stuff you could do during that year that would be way more fruitful to get you paid and give you the exposure and the interaction that you need to be a competitive applicant. So, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I'll just
thank you
say
both.
that I'll just say also that if you decide to do gap years, you can just work at a lab. You don't have to do a formal program. I got paid pretty well to be a research assistant, and I got plenty of great experience. So
Awesome. It's been an hour and a half, but this is good. Any other questions? And I know we probably have to leave soon and get to our work, but any other questions by anyone?
Should we put our emails somewhere / contact info?
I can send that along with the PowerPoint, and I got to figure out how to upload videos. I feel so old. I'll upload this video and send everyone the link. Guys, get a mentor. Number one, like it saves your life. And join that group that I think put on the FAQ as well. People ask questions there all the time. I think it's like 85 to 90 people now in that group. So individuals are interested in MD PhD. So
yeah, also Twitter is a great resource. People are very nice on Twitter, much nicer than on a lot of other social media platforms. At least for pre-med stuff. I've heard terrible things about Reddit and Student Doctor Network and whatever, and I'm very glad I never saw any of that before I applied. But I can say, as someone who is fairly active on Twitter now, it's a good resource because people are pretty willing to help. So.
Yeah, let us know if you need anything. We might do one of these again closer to May, for that we can just talk about applications and stuff like that. Daniel, you asked a great question, so we will do that. And then good thing we have all of your emails now. We can just send you guys information about it as the time comes. But we appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining. And we're here for you guys. Physician scientist path. All right, guys. You guys have a wonderful night. I will get back to my lab work.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys so much. Bye.